The Concierto de Aranjuez is a composition for classical guitar and orchestra by the Spanish composer Joaquín Rodrigo. Written in 1939, it is far and away Rodrigo's best-known work, and its success established his reputation as one of the most significant Spanish composers of the 20th century. Inspiration: the Concierto de Aranjuez was inspired by the gardens at Palacio Real de Aranjuez, the spring resort palace and gardens built by Philip II in the last half of the 16th century and rebuilt in the middle of the 18th century by Ferdinand V. The work attempts to transport the listener to another place and time through the evocation of the sounds of nature. According to the composer, the first movement is animated by a rhythmic spirit and vigor without either of the two themes, interrupting its relentless pace. The second movement represents a dialogue between guitar and solo instruments, cor anglais, bassoon, oboe, horn, etc., and the last movement recalls a courtly dance in which the combination of double and triple time maintains a taut tempo right to the closing bar. He described the concerto itself as capturing the fragrance of magnolias, the singing of birds, and the gushing of fountains in the gardens of Aranjuez. Rodrigo and his wife Victoria stayed silent for many years about the inspiration for the second movement, and thus the popular belief grew that it was inspired by the bombing of Guernica in 1937. In her autobiography, Victoria eventually declared that it was both an evocation of the happy days of their honeymoon and a response to Rodrigo's devastation at the miscarriage of their first pregnancy. It was composed in 1939 in Paris. Rodrigo dedicated the Concierto de Aranjuez to Regino Sainz de la Maza. Rodrigo, nearly blind since age 3, was a pianist. He did not play the guitar, yet he still managed to capture and project the role of the guitar in Spanish music. Political context: in 1939, the Spanish Civil War had just ended, beginning, or continuing, depending on the part of Spain, the dictatorship of General Francisco Franco. A work premiered in Spain in this highly charged environment had to celebrate, or pretend to celebrate, or permit the interpretation that it was celebrating, the current political situation and regime. The celebration of a palace and gardens of a 16th century Habsburg king offered no ideological threat to the regime, and was in harmony with its emerging policy of celebrating Spanish history, conservatively interpreted. Composition: composed in early 1939, in Paris, amid the tensions of the impending war, it was the first work Rodrigo wrote for guitar and orchestra. The instrumentation is unusual, rarely does the guitar face the forces of a full orchestra. Instead, the guitar is never overwhelmed, remaining the solo instrument throughout. Movements: this concerto is in 3 movements: Allegro con spirito, Adagio and Allegro gentile. The first and last movements are in D major while the famous middle movement is in B minor. The first movement's 40-measure introduction begins with the solo guitar strumming a 3-measure theme in 6/8. The theme is made of tonic, supertonic, and dominant chords and features a flamenco-like hemiola rhythm. As it repeats several times, the tonic chord's uppermost note gets higher, starting with the third, then using the fifth, the tonic, and the fifth again. The second movement, the best known of the 3, is marked by its slow pace and quiet melody, introduced by the cor anglais, with a soft accompaniment by the guitar and strings. A feeling of quiet regret permeates the piece. Ornamentation is added gradually to the melody in the beginning. An off-tonic trill in the guitar creates the first seeds of tension in the piece. They grow and take hold, but relax back to the melody periodically. Eventually, A climactic build-up starts. This breaks back into the main melody, molto appassionato, voiced by the strings with accompaniment from the woodwinds. The piece finally resolves to a calm arpeggio from the guitar, though it is the strings in the background rather than the guitar's final note that resolve the piece. The third movement is in mixed meter, alternating between 2/4 and 3/4. At the beginning of the movement, 4 measure phrases containing 9 beats in total are formed from 1/3 measure followed by 3/2 measures. As the movement progresses, the meter becomes more irregular. Premiere. The premiere of the Concierto de Aranjuez was held on November 9, 1940 at the Palau de la Música Catalana, in Barcelona. It was performed by guitarist Gino Sainz de la Maza with the Orquesta Filarmónica de Barcelona conducted by César Mendoza La Salle. On December 11, 1940 the concerto received its first performance in Madrid, at the Teatro Español de Madrid conducted by Jesus Aramburu, with the same soloist. The United States premiere was given by Array de l'Auteur on November 19, 1959, with the Cleveland Orchestra conducted by Robert Shaw. Interpretations. The concerto was recorded for the first time in either 1947 or 1948 by guitarist Gino Sainz de la Maza with the Orquesta Nacional de España, conducted by Adolfo Argenta, on 78 revolutions per minute records. This recording was inducted into the Latin Grammy Hall of Fame. Narciso Yepes then made 2 early recordings of the Aranjuez, both also with Argenta, one in mono with the Madrid Chamber Orchestra, released between 1953 and 1955, and the second in stereo with the Orquesta Nacional de España, recorded in 1957 and released in 1959. Although Ida Presti gave the French premiere of the Concierto de Aranjuez in 1948, the first female guitarist to record the concerto was Renata Darago, 1958 or 1959, who played with fingertips rather than fingernails, accompanied by the Orquesta de Conciertos de Madrid, conducted by Adán Alonso. William Yeoman provides an interesting discographical survey of recordings of the concerto in Gramophone magazine. Until asked to perform and interpret Concierto de Aranjuez in 1991, the Spanish flamenco guitarist Paco de Lucia was not proficient at reading musical notation. De Lucia claimed in Paco de Lucia Light and Shade, a portrait that he gave greater emphasis to rhythmical accuracy in his interpretation of the concerto at the expense of the perfect tone preferred by classical guitarists. Composer Joaquin Rodrigo later declared that no one had ever played his composition in such a brilliant manner. At the request of Nicanor Zabala, Rodrigo transcribed the concerto for harp and orchestra in 1974. A number of musicians have since reinterpreted the work, usually the second movement, perhaps most famously jazz musician Miles Davis in the company of arranger Gil Evans. On the album Sketches of Spain, 1960, Davis says, "That melody is so strong that the softer you play it, the stronger it gets, and the stronger you play it, the weaker it gets." Deep Purple played the Orange Juice song, David Coverdale and John Lord, on the sessions of the 1975 Come Taste the Band album, which is based around the famous second movement. It appears on the collection Days May Come. Preeminent classical guitarist John Williams has recorded the concerto numerous times, including on his CD and video The Seville Concert, 1993, expanded 2003. Violinist Hikuko Kawi's version, Aranjuez, is an upbeat, faster update to the work. Clarinetist Jean-Christian Michel's transcription of Aranjuez has sold some 1,500,000 copies. Guitarist Buckethead covered sketches of Spain on his album Electric Tears as a tribute to Miles Davis. Guitarist Ollie John Roth's version Air de Aranjuez can be found on his album Transcendental Sky Guitar. Bassist Buster Williams performs a solo bass transcription of the second movement of Concierto de Aranjuez on his album Riot Libert, 2006. The jazz pianist Chick Corea used the beginning of the second movement as an introduction to his composition Spain. Al Jarreau used the same intro in his arrangement of Spain as a vocalise. A version of the Concierto, influenced by Davis's rendition, was performed by Jim Hall on his 1975 album, Concierto. Hall performs the piece in full, running to over 19 minutes. Jazz saxophonist Tom Scott performed the second movement on his 1985 release One Night, One Day. This is the second movement in entirety. The piece also featured in the film Brassed Off, with Ewan McGregor, and was played by the Grimethorpe Colliery Band. In that film, it is sometimes referred to as the Concierto d'Orange Juice. This is a familiar name in the brass band community, although it is often shortened to Orange Juice. The arrangement they referred to was created by Kevin Bolton. The modern jazz quartet has several recordings of the Concierto, one with Laurindo Almeida, another on the Last Concert CD and In Memoriam CD. Jim Roberts of Orlando, FL, has two recordings, one with his trio and another with his sextet, both very listenable arrangements. A version entitled Rodrigo's Guitar Concierto de Aranjuez, theme from second movement, was released by The Shadows in 1979. A version of the Adagio was released as a single entitled Rodrigo's Guitar Concerto by Jeff Love, under the name of Manuel in the Music of the Mountains, in 1976. This reached number 3 in the British singles chart. Lebanese female singer Fairs has also used the music of the second movement on one of her songs La Beirut, to Beirut. Also the Egyptian-born Greek singer Demis Roussos used the same music for his song Follow Me. In 1967, the French singer Richard Anthony brought out a single named Aranjuez Mon Amour, with lyrics by Guy Bontempi. The Israeli singer Rita also sang a song on her second album that contained the melody of the second movement. The song was titled Concierto de Aranjuez or the Rainbow Song, Shirley Hakeshate, and appeared on her 1988 album Yami Hot Dom. Led Zeppelin's keyboardist, bassist John Paul Jones incorporated parts of the music during an improvisation section of their song No Quarter on their 1977 tour. Electronic musician and composer Azalto Mita performed a version on his 1978 album Cosmos, Space Fantasy. André Rieu performed the piece accompanied by the Church Bells of Maastricht in a performance available on the DVD Songs from My Heart. Egyptian-Italian singer Dalida had a song entitled Aranjuez La Tua Voce which employed parts of the melody from the second movement. An arrangement of this piece is played by Takanori Urasawa a few times in a popular children's Japanese animation series, Digimon Adventure. Singer Summer Watson included a version called Aranjuez, Ma Pensée on her self-titled 2002 debut album Summer. Japanese jazz fusion drummer Akira Jimbo, better known as a former drummer for groups such as Cassiopeia and Jim Saku, recorded an arrangement of this tune on the album Jimbo de Cover, which, as implied, is an album containing only his covers of other people's songs. American figure skater Michelle Kwan used an arrangement of the music for her free skate program to win the last of her 5 World Championship titles at the 2003 World Figure Skating Championships. The limited edition Drum and Bugle Corps, 1988 to 1992, used the opening portion of the Adagio movement, dubbed Spain, as a warm-up piece. Gimmick created a vocal, blues arrangement entitled Follow Me for Ghost in the Shell 2, Innocence. Herb Alpert's 1979 album Rise contains a track, Aranjuez, Mon Amour, 642, on side 2. The Cuban classic guitar player Leo Brouwer made a jazz-style interpretation of the Concierto with the group Hierarch Ear.